big welcome to Matt Dawson, the first guest on the Your Zooki podcast. I think Matt is a brilliant ambassador for us. We're really thrilled to have him getting involved in the Zooki business.
Marcus, can you look a little bit more happy about the fact that
I don't know where to look.
No, he was like picking me up and you're like, yeah, is it? It's all right, isn't it? He's all right.
No, I'm buzzing to have you on board.
We've been looking forward to is learning a bit about how you got started in rugby, what the early part of your career looks like. Tell us a bit about how you ended up becoming a rugby player.
What's your story?
What's my story, eh? The reason why I played rugby was because my mum and dad basically wanted to socialise with their friends on a Sunday, and it was at the rugby club, and I went down there basically so that they could have a couple of hours off from the kids. I'd run around. Dad would have a few beers with his mates at lunchtime. Mum would, make the bacon sandwiches and burgers, and it was it's such a sort of family oriented type sport, isn't it? On at a weekend, and I mean that was the way that I just spent my weekends. Probably from when I was 5. Yeah, probably when I was about 5. My dad put me in amongst the under 8s when I was 5, and I got my head kicked in by the older kids. But, we'd put a toweling headband around me, gave me padded goalkeeper shorts, big knee pads, and basically said, get out there and do your thing, just go and enjoy yourself. So that's how it all started. But I did that until really when I went to school. I went to a really good rugby school, Royal Grammar School, High Wycombe, and the combination of playing there and the sort of intensity of training a couple of times a week, playing at the weekend, playing on a Saturday, playing a high standard of rugby there, and then I'd be at Marlow Rugby Club on the Sunday. I was just, it was volume. I haven't really got like specific moments in my youth where I thought to myself, oh, I'm quite good at this. I was just loving playing rugby, and I was in a good team and we'd score tries and win trophies, and that was just part and parcel of enjoying my youth. It really wasn't until I started then trying to get into, the county side at under 15s, 16s, where I was getting a lot of attention, and they were asking me to be captain, or I would then get into the area team, and then you're going for England trials, and you're just sort of looking around thinking, all right, this is all quite good. I've got a nice England shirt and a purple shiny tracksuit. You're probably too young to remember those, but back in the day, the England players only every year there was not a whole kit change. That it was a white cotton traders shirt, white shorts, blue socks with the white tops, and they would all wear a purple shiny Nike tracksuit. And so to get one of those was like, eureka, you've made it. And that it wasn't a professional sport. It wasn't going to be a career for me. It was something that I knew that I was enjoying and that I was good at and wanted to be better at. That was quite a common theme in my character, that if I had a passion for something, if I enjoyed it, that whatever that may be, it got 100% Matt Dawson. And even to point on my A-levels, I didn't do very well in my A-levels and had to either retake or go up to Northampton, and they asked me they'd sort it out. It helped me get a job up there. But really it was to go up and play sort of rugby at the weekends. And my dad was like, no, he's got to go back to university, and he's got to get his A-levels, he's got to go to university. And Mum said, listen, we know when he gets his teeth stuck into something, it's going to happen. That's just the way that he is. So my mum was really key in sort of calming my dad down and saying, right, listen, if he goes up to Northampton, he's going to enjoy himself. He's going to be playing rugby. He's going to do a job. I was a security guard at Debenhams, or doing my management trainee Argos, Debenhams, all these places where I was the young lad with a flat cap on and security outfit. It was absolutely horrific working 14-hour shifts in the middle of the night in Corby or whatever. I mean, it really wasn't a very attractive proposition. But I had this rugby to play on a Tuesday and Thursday night and play at the weekend. I mean, that was probably going to be my existence. That was just what I was going to go and do. And I was getting into corporate world. I started to work into it in accounts and HR and sales and in this business. And I thought that was going to be my pathway. And then the game went professional. I had a couple of other jobs in other businesses, but the game went professional. And from that moment, there was this realization of, wow, I can earn a living out of playing a sport that I've loved since I was 5 years old. Give me the pen, I'm signing up.
So you were already playing at the point that they just decided that this was now going to be a professional sport. What was that? What was that transition then?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, at the time, you say you're doing your own little bits of training with a couple of mates in the gym after work, and then your main sessions were Tuesday, Thursday night. You'd play Saturday. Till all of a sudden, you were given a contract to say, right, you're here every day. You're training every day. You go to the gym, you do your skills session. It was a blank sheet of paper. I mean, you've walked from one Saturday at the end of the season to the next season. It was right. Well, how do you start being a professional rugby player? What skills do you learn? What training do you do? What food do you eat? How, rehabilitation, prehabilitation. I mean, it was all completely new. And that was really exciting because you then go on this very steep learning curve. And to be a part of that was actually, I mean, it was really quite special. Some of it was horrifically bad because you look back the Tuesday and Thursday night sessions where you're smashing into each other and having a couple of pints afterwards. And we thought we could just do that every day. So you were doing all these training sessions, then you go at the pub and have a few beers and then get up the next morning. Oh, well, right, I'm a professional rugby player. Let's go and train again and go and have a few, when it was amateur, you would go and you'd have a few beers on a Thursday night, no problem at all because you could recover Friday, go to work, play Saturday. When it was professional, to start with, it's like, well, we better only drink on a Wednesday night. We've got to have an extra day. Let's not go too mad. And then as the years went by, it went to Tuesday, then to Monday, and then it's right. Let's have a few beers after the game, and then let's leave it. I suppose that whole transition is one of those sort of sliding door moments for me because, what would I be right now today if that hadn't gone professional or you hadn't had the injuries or you hadn't been selected for teams, then who knows. But it was a fascinating time of my life because there was a lot up for grabs, and if you moved quickly, you could really establish yourself as as fitter and stronger than anybody else. There were, particularly when you got into the England camp in the late 90s, if you were prepared to dedicate yourself not only in your general fitness and your skills, but nutritionally, how you came back from injuries or your hydration or all the little edges that you could grasp, you would get a significant advantage. Whereas now the margins are so fine compared to from player to player. Whereas then I saw that as an opportunity to sort of leapfrog a lot of other scrum halves that were trying to play for England.
So, because around that time, you made it into the Lions team and all of those little edges that you got to sort of beat the others to that place. Talk a bit about that, because like I think that we were chatting before about like in terms of physical, pushing your body to the physical limit and the sort of peak of sport and the intensity of a Lions tour, it doesn't really get much more intense than that. Like how did you prepare? So those edges you talk about the nutrition. You mentioned before about the scales and how.
Yeah. So that when the game went professional, and everyone knew that, when it wasn't professional, you'd have a bowl of pasta the night before the game, and you thought that you were you were right on your nutritional values. There were spot on. Whereas there, towards that late 90s, playing for England and playing for the Lions, it would get to the point where you would have your notebook, you'd have a little very sensitive scales, and when you're picking your food out of the buffet and you sit back in your seat, you are scooping your potatoes and putting it on the scale, weighing your potatoes, making a note in your book, putting them back on your plate, put your broccoli on there. Same thing for your chicken breast, and
I can't believe that.
all brown pasta. Everywhere was brown pasta. I mean, it was, they took all of the luxury items, the bread and butter pudding, or that's all disappeared, because I think they had this perception around nutrition, like, because it was all new, that they went to the nth degree and it was zero fat or high protein, high carbs at certain times, our post or post training, etc. All the basics that we all know, but it was magnified enormously.
Were they enforcing that in the England
Yeah.
camp? Was that across the board?
Absolutely. I mean, if you weren't on board with that, you were never going to play for England.
And were protein shakes big in the 90s?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, listen, what you're creating here, right, is like pure gold. It's like liquid gold compared to the protein shakes that we would have as professional rugby players. Honestly, I reckon you could. This looks a relatively tidy room that we're sat in here, but if I swept it and just put the dust in a pot and filled it with water, that was pretty much what the whey protein was like. It was. We were all masters at being able to eat and drink food that tasted disgusting. Same with protein bars. Protein bar, I mean, you put a protein bar in your mouth and every mouthful is going to take you 5 minutes to chew, and it just tasted of dust. There would be the tiniest hint of chocolate, but it wasn't really chocolate. There would be a little bit of vanilla, and the whey protein would be thick and wouldn't. You'd shake it, but it would still have big lumps in it. And you basically, you're drinking a pint of this stuff, and it's just closing your eyes and get it in because I know it's doing me good, or you think it's doing you good. It sounds so archaic, but at the time, that was state of the art stuff. That's what was going to be the difference.
So between the games, then, so like on that Lions tour, when you're getting a battering out there, how would you recover in between games? Because that's like the level of information and the knocks that you're picking up, and just the general exhaustion after something like a Lions clash.
Yeah, the short turnaround was the key, where you're playing at the weekends, and it wasn't just the fact that you were playing on a Tuesday and Wednesday, but ordinarily in line squads, if you're playing on the Saturday, you are up on Sunday morning and you're holding tackle shields for the team that are playing on the Tuesday, if you're not involved in the Tuesday. So it's pretty much every day. I mean, very rarely would you get a complete day off to do nothing. There'll be some kind of rehabilitation that you've got to go through. At that time, you'd be having ice baths, or lots of pool rehab. The food and the nutritional side of things, even then back in '97, it wasn't. We didn't have our own chef or our own nutritionist on the trip. That didn't really come till probably '99 with England. England were ahead of the game, and when we took a chef to the World Cup in 2003, everybody was looking. All the other teams were looking down their nose at England, thinking, "Oh, look at England! What an absolute bunch of." Well, I'm not going to say it, but they have to have their own chef. It's like, well, yeah, we do, because we want the right food for us for the right time of day, and you're going into all the different hotels and there's different ingredients, and I mean that was an edge for us winning. There's no question about our nutritional and fitness team that we had was way ahead of anybody else, any other nation, and that gave us an edge. So when you're on fast turnarounds like the Lions tour, like going into World Cup camps, the food and hydration is really, really important, because you've just got to suck it up and get on with it. It's not like, oh, I'm a little bit sore here or can't really train. You're sort of warming yourself up to get through it to get on to the next session. And I mean, that's progressed enormously to where it is now. But yeah, in the early days of my career, it was more around, I think it was slightly micromanaged and more around the whole protein and carbs and that sort of basic theory of load yourself full of protein and that's how you're going to put muscle on. Or if you've done a hard session, an aerobic session, you've got to make sure you're carb ready to go or you can replenish straight after. It wasn't as nowhere near as scientific as maybe it is now.
So in those days, you weren't taking it like the turmeric, for example. You'd take it for inflammation after a game like that. They didn't have any supplements like omega-3.
Yeah. Lots of lots and lots of tablets and omega-3, creatine. The list was long. I do remember part of my sleep-in regime would have been an alarm clock at 3 a.m, and I'd have a pot of supplements. So you'd wake up in the middle of the night and you'd take maybe half a dozen supplement tablets. And you're rattling around. You're full. You were full of those types of supplements for sure. Yeah.
What would a day look like for you on game day for the Lions?
Yeah, because I think even the run up to the games as well.
The 40 hours up to the game. What would that look like?
Depending on how the coach and the fitness side see the relevant sort of taper towards a game, because Friday would always be a team run, light session. Most of the Friday is spent grazing throughout the day. So you're not going for massive meals, but you're fueling your body and actually getting to a crescendo towards that sort of Friday and Saturday morning. The not a huge intense session. Some guys may do like a small amount of power work just to keep things fired up for the next day. I didn't like doing a lot on a Friday. I like to sort of chill and get my head around the more strategic side of things. But one thing I was neurotic about was getting my body inside the best shape, getting it fueled, ready to go. I made a few mistakes over my career of sort of overeating, or actually overhydration was quite a big one. I remember being in Cardiff for a Wales-England game, and on the Friday, it got to sort of 4 or 5 o'clock, and I could feel like my head was like I was losing it. I was not hallucinating, but I was spent. I was absolutely spent, and we had a session in the morning, and what had happened is that I was drinking so much water that I was flushing out all the minerals and all the vitamins that I'd been building up to. I mean, I was drinking excessive water and I was flushing it all out of my system, and I was sort of, because of that I suppose mental energy that I was using, and I think it was because I was going like pure energy drinks, sugar, and electrolytes and all the rest of it, and then thinking, right, I just, I can't, and I was just drinking water for 4, 5, 6 hours, and I was basically just peeing it all out of my system, and it just disappeared. So I found that quite interesting. From then on, I'd always had this balance of, slightly diluting drinks and then getting to a crescendo. So you were just topping it up and trying to get yourself to the max that 24 hours before, when you're topping up getting towards game day, where you're absolutely fired up. And I would always have a triple shot espresso like 45 minutes before the game. Some guys might have a can of Red Bull, so just absolutely pumps you ready to go, so you're fully wired up. But that's for me. Whenever I was playing those, particularly those big games, when it isn't necessarily about your physical state of mind because you're there. It's more about your mental and just the little edges that you need to get absolutely right.
Yeah, because that's another big part of it. Like health and wellness in general, like a huge. There's obviously the physical and the nutritional, but mental is probably just a bigger part of it, if not bigger. I think that when we're trying to, when you talk about things like the World Cup and the pressure in those big games, like how did you get yourself mentally prepped for that sort of high pressure situation? And we were saying before that you were the one that actually threw the pass for Johnny Wilkinson's drop goal in the World Cup.
Yeah, it's not everyone. You know, when there is a big event, doesn't matter whether it's a sports event or whether it's a sale of a company, whether it's a deal that goes through. Everybody is focused on the outcome, because that's what you're celebrating. That's nobody is thinking about the months, the years before that to how they got there. I mean, it's not always the story. It's not the exciting bit, and it's exactly the same in pressure environments in sport. Those the Johnny Wilkinson drop goal, of course we remember. It's like, oh my God, that's absolutely amazing. But and what a brilliant player in the story behind it. However, that came from years of preparation and training and highs and lows, injuries, form, winning, losing, getting in the gym, making sure that you're in full physical shape, all the way through to the mental state that you need to be in under those pressure environments is what ultimately wins you the game. Because if you're in those environments, if you're thinking about what you're doing, you are absolutely dead and buried. I mean, you're gone. If it's not instinctive, by the time you're playing in a World Cup final and you need to pass the ball to your fly half, if you're having to think about that, chances are you're going to balls it up. And that's where that team, individually, they were all those players were right on there. So I wasn't nervous before that game at all, because mentally I was all tuned into how we were going to play, what the opposition were going to do. The all the what ifs that are in front of you. You've got all these solutions in your head. You knew about the referee. You've done all your practice drills and your passing drills and your kicking. That's all there. That's done and dusted. This was all about the process and all of those thousands of processes that you need to go through and you have gone through for the last 20, 30 years of your life. You know that they're there. It's now more of just a calming sort of state of mind that you put yourselves into those games, which is why a vast majority of the times those teams that win high pressure environments, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's World Cups, they make it look relatively easy because they're not forcing it, they're not thinking about it, and there's no stress and pain. It looks effortless. I mean, you look at, sometimes I refer back to even things like snooker, where you watch the best snooker players in the world and they're just, a lot of them just like cruising around, and we all know, if you've played snooker, how unbelievably difficult that is at the best of times to be under pressure to win a world championships and you're banging out a 1:20 break. That has to be instinctive. So much of that has to be instinctive, and generally sport tends to be like that.
Yeah, and even with golf as well. As soon as you start overthinking things, when you swing, you're done.
Yeah, I do. I mean, those that play golf with me will know I get stuck over the ball. And I know that the people watching me are like, for God's sake, take the club away and get on with it. But I'm overthinking it. And more often than not, I'll overthinking it and think I've got everything absolutely spot on, and then I'll swing it terribly and hit a bad shot. Whereas if I just wiggle it around and then swing the club, it's there and thereabouts. And that's a really good example. Your instinct, how many balls that you've hit and players have hit, they know how to hit the balls. It's the environment that's changing your preparation into hitting the ball. So, and that's exactly the same as any sport.
Yeah, I think another thing as well, like and mindset probably played a massive part of it. Is like coming to your end of your career and that transition out of the world of rugby, or not necessarily completely out, but from going from being a player at that level and then transitioning into life after rugby.
Yeah, going from like 7 days a week, every single day you're told sort of what to do, what to eat, where to train, where to play. How do you go from overnight going, that's it, it's done?
It is tricky. You know, I mean, anyone who says it's a stroll in the park are absolutely lying through their back teeth there, because you're right. It is pretty much 24/7. You're being wrapped in cotton wool, or if you've got any kind of ailment or a cold, you can just phone the club doctor, or you've got to go to the GP, or like everybody else has got to do. You've got to go to the shops, you've got to buy your own food, you've got to cook your own food, you've got to all of that stuff. I mean, I think because I was always quite a practical, nosy type of person, I quite enjoyed the experience of being free and being away from that environment. Sometimes it would stifle me in my career, just as an individual, and I would get over rugbyed, for want of a better expression, and I would want to go away for 3-4 days or a week and just, I can't handle this anymore. So I think I was more naturally accepting to that environment where I was out in the big wide world. It did help that a lot of the environments that I found myself in post rugby, there was still an element of mollycoddling. So if you're working in media, you're going to get looked after, or someone asks you to come to an event, then you get treated a little bit more differently than others. But that there was quite a nice little soft transition into, right, I'm in the big wide world. I've got my own house, or I've now got a family to look after. So I think I was just a little bit maybe broader minded than maybe some other sports people that are so driven about what they're going to do, that's it and nothing else. I was always a little bit more looking at a slightly bigger picture. So it didn't, I don't think it stressed me as much as maybe it could have done. I looked at it as a bit of a challenge. It's not easy, but I mean, that's,
Did you have time off when you retired from rugby, or did you get straight into coaching and business? Or
I had an opportunity. I ended up doing Strictly Come Dancing. Pretty much when I retired, I did MasterChef and Strictly Come Dancing the summer that I retired, and actually it was really good for me because it took me completely away from rugby, took me into a very different world, and was very entertaining. It took me into a world where I wouldn't have necessarily have said that I enjoyed every minute, because it was all very theatre show and completely different to sport, but it gave me a perspective that I could then balance off as to, what I would like to do, but also what I wouldn't like to do. So I did a few of those types of things and other work, and for a couple of years, but I always had my mind on the corporate world. That was probably my last 5 years of playing rugby. That was my goal, to establish myself and understand what I would be good at, and maybe communicate with a community, like a mentoring community, that would say, right, Matt, well, here are your skills, here are your work-ons. Lucky they would maybe offer opportunities to go and sit on board meetings, or go into sales conferences, or and just understand it a little bit more, so that I could then bring my skill set into a different environment. And I love that. I love the challenge. It's never gonna be the winning the World Cup or winning a Lions tour. You just got to accept that. But there's still a real thrill around trying to be successful in that field that I quite like.
And then sort of coming back to the sort of your lifestyle now that you've moved past the stage, you're no longer a professional athlete performing at the top level, but how are you keeping yourself healthy? Are you still thinking about nutrition? Are you still staying active? What do you think is working well for you there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always had good habits, which is crucial, really. it's ever changing. I mean, you're right in the thick of it, and you need to know it every single day, and you will see the changes from day to day, month to month. But I think I've got a good wide understanding, broad understanding, but I get into good habits. So, I'll train a couple of times a week, and I've had I had a heart condition 5 or 6 years ago, which stops me from taking myself to the max and going on hard hit sessions or going on long bike rides and all the stuff that I used to enjoy doing. It's just like, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. There's no point in putting my heart under undue stress. So what can I do? So there's lots of like planking and core work and stuff that I can still feel like I'm, the muscles are still tight and toned, but I'm not necessarily, I'm not going to be able to run a marathon or anything like that. And nutrition and hydration has always been from my sports background, but that's something that I know that I can be easily controlled on. Now, I don't have a particularly strict diet, but I manage my portion size. I manage my sort of my fats and salts. I do a lot of cooking myself. I'm in real simple terms, if I'm going to have a bacon sandwich, I'm not going to have the fat on the bacon, but I can still enjoy my tiny little things. I'm not going to I'm passionate about food. I absolutely love food, but I think I just understand when to properly go for it and let my hair down if I had any, but go for it. I still like having a beer and going on holiday and doing all, but then I'll balance it with, well, okay, well, I'll just calm it down for a little bit here, and and supplements are really important to me. I mean, I think again from my sports career, you understood what worked for you and what didn't, and as you grow a little bit older, and so whether I've got a heart condition or your joints are a little bit more achy, or previously I would have been loading myself up with ibuprofen when I was playing rugby for anti-inflammatory. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. And so, what are the options that are out there? So, I'm still across it, but I've been, interested to see where the new sort of technology and the stuff that you were talking about earlier is. You'd be a fool not to try it or use it. And it's not for everybody. I know it's not for everybody, but I think it's really important to find out what works for you, not only physically, but mentally. Does it give you just a little bit of a 2, 3, 4% edge in your day, in your recovery, how you feel? Because that then is reflective in the rest of your day. It's, if I know if I'm going to have some of the turmeric in the morning, I know I'm going to get that little bit of sort of turmeric boost that you tend to get. I probably don't necessarily feel all of a sudden that my body is super changing, but there's there's just something going on there, and I know a little bit about it, but that then subconsciously makes you have a slight spring in your step. It means that the way that you talk to your friends or you go to work, your atmosphere, your approach to people is a little bit different. You go, I know that if I eat properly and I give myself the right supplements when I go home and I'm seeing my kids, I've got energy to see my kids, and then that makes you happy. It's this, it's this sort of, there's so many different factors and knock-on effects towards your general well-being of life, which is, it's not just down to food and nutrition and supplementation, but I'm a believer that if you get that right and you get your work balance right and other home life right, then it all adds up to 10 or 15%. And then we're making some serious inroads out as to how you feel.
Yeah. Well, I think that, so you've been using the turmeric product recently. I think like one of the things with us, and obviously the whole concept behind the brand, like if you dive into the detail from our perspective, it can get quite complicated what we're trying to do with Zooki and some of the science that's in there. If you were to try and explain to someone in layman's term what Zooki is, how would you explain that?
Good question, that. I'm going to look at how it tastes, right? Texture, taste. How easy is it to to consume, the packaging, the experience, the technical aspects of it makes sense to me. But is that going to be from day to day? I'm not going to think, oh, I tell you what, Marcus and Jack have done an unbelievable job with how they've wrapped every single molecule. You know what I mean? I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, it's the boxes on a shelf. So when I will always have a pint of water. I don't know why, but I will always have a pint of water when I wake up in the morning. Yeah. And by the sink, on the shelf in the sink is the packet, and I'm like, yeah, right. I know I'm going to have that, and I know that it's good for my anti-inflams. I know that my joints are bound to be absolutely knackered. At some stage, I know it's good for my digestion. All the things that turmeric's good for, but probably most importantly is there isn't one part of it where I sort of have to like either close my eyes or clench and think, just get on and do it. And I think with a lot of supplements in my career, there has been an element of, right, I'm either counting them all out or there's no experience to it other than I've got to do this. I think that's really important, because with diets, with nutrition, supplementation, the key for me is, can you make it a default part of your day, right? Can it be completely and utterly normal? You look at any of those diets that are out there, and we can all do them for a month, 2 months, we can do them for a year. But if it's a bind, if it's a pain in the arse, I'm going to guarantee there's a really good chance you're going to stop doing it eventually. Yeah. Whereas what I like about it is that is something that I sort of want to do. It's good for me and I want to do it. And yes, I can put it in a shake or I can dilute, whatever, but the experience of tearing it off and wandering around and flicking the TV on where I'm still finishing it and it's like done, as long as I don't get a bit on my finger and put it on my white shirt.
That's the issue with the turmeric.
You can't get it. It stains everything it touches.
I have done that to a couple of t-shirts.
I'm sat here with jeans on that I realised before I'm covered in turmeric stains. But it's just, they're the tiny little details. They're the edges, aren't they, around them? Because the whole experience of it, we know it's good for us. All right, that's a given. But how can we get into the habit of making it part of our daily routines? So because then we'll start to benefit from all the things that we've been talking about. Yeah, and then just lastly for me, so Turmeric Zooki, who would you recommend it for? Is there anyone you think that this sort of product, turmeric, in a sachet every day, who would you recommend it to?
Are you trying to hint that I'm a little bit older than you?
No.
Oh no.
No, I'm just curious because I think that it's actually interesting, that your take on what it is to you. Like we Marcus and I can sit here all day and we can try and develop products and we can obsess over the little technical aspects of it and we can think about the delivery systems and the bioavailability. But it's just interesting, to think that's what it is to us, and we might say that's what Zooki is, but actually it can be different things to different people. And you might see that there's this particular product might work for. Is there anyone that you can think that would benefit?
Well, I think those, age range, who knows? It feels to me that I'm probably benefiting more from this because of, I'm in my 40s. It's inevitable that there is going to be, and because of my background and I've used my body a lot, there is an element of my body slowly degrading and disappearing. However, I think that sort of younger generation, the more your generation, are so much more educated and understanding, and the preventative qualities that it can deliver and around turmeric and other supplements as well that you're creating, I think actually the scale is wider than just we're getting into the post 40, 50-year-old. It's easy to do, and we want to do supplementation, because if you go to a lot of sandwich places, shall we call them, across the board, you are seeing turmeric shots, ginger shots. And I will buy one of those, and I know it's got nowhere near the concentration that's going to be inside that. It's got nowhere near the amount of quality that these have, and yet it's becoming part of the psyche that actually it's good for me. So if anything, I think we need to direct this more at the sort of 45 plus, because I think there's that stigma around and maybe lack of understanding of it, maybe that's a demographic that I would direct it more at, because I do feel that the younger generations are much more au fait with it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think I'd agree with that. I feel like everyone is collectively becoming more health conscious, and there's a whole generation now coming through that even when they don't have any aches and pains, I think they have a preventative mindset. Yeah. So it's changing all the time.
Well, the one thing I would say is that if people are if they're listening to it or watching it, they have their own version. A lot of people have got their own version of supplementation, whether it's taking fish oils or a version of. What I would say is, do the comparison, because if you've been taking the same supplement for years and years and years and years and years, you sort of become numb to the flavor or the experience, or if it's not given it to you. Whereas I know that if you took this opposed to a capsule or a load of tablets, I mean, it's going to be a no-brainer. I mean, it does actually does taste pretty good.
That's the idea.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's not like, I mean, my kids are 7 and 9, and straight away I was like, go on then, boys, have a go on that. And you can see them, they're tasting it, and it's a strong sort of that tangerine, citrus type flavour. And they wouldn't touch turmeric with a barge pole, or they wouldn't even go anywhere near it. And all right, it's not an ice lolly, or it's not like a chopper chop. But they're going to have it, and they're going to be like, "Oh right, yeah, well, that's all right." That.
We find interest when we're at shows or speaking to new customers. The perception of the taste of turmeric is always awful.
Yeah, it was the same with the fish oil as well. When we started with that, but turmeric is another where sometimes it's actually difficult to get people to try this sort of product, because they look at it. There's a massive dose of turmeric. I don't even want to try that, because they're thinking this is going to taste horrible. But I think that's another thing, isn't it? Is overcoming that barrier of what they have a preconceived idea of what it's going to taste like.
But do those people who have got a preconceived idea of taste, do they know what the properties of the active agents of turmeric and all the rest of it, that what it could do for them?
Yeah, but that's another thing, is like the really powerful bit inside turmeric is the curcumin, and the curcumin, which is the anti-inflammatory part or the bioactive, that only forms a very small part of turmeric. So if you were to consume turmeric, to get the amount of curcumin that's in one of these sachets, you'd have to consume about 2 jars of turmeric powder, and even then you would really struggle to absorb the curcumin. So having it so convenient, not only in such a high dose of curcumin, but by wrapping it in those lipids so that it's easy for your body to absorb, you couldn't come close to that from consuming vast amounts of turmeric in your diet. So there is a big educational piece with these sorts of products, not only to get people to want to try it, but to understand what this isn't just your regular turmeric shot or liquid. And I think that's a big battle as well, is the education piece.
It's quite interesting around that comparison to ginger. I mean, they're both roots, aren't they? They both have that same sort of look and feel, I would guess. And yet the perception of people where they are with ginger, they would probably say, oh yeah, it's really good for you. You should be taking ginger all the time. And yet, for some reason, part of that education is, well, actually, you can be getting even more from something that's pretty similar to it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's the same. I think there's so many natural ingredients that people are discovering that have all these different properties that, when taken in the right way and taken in the right dose and taken properly, have a big impact for people. I think there's a big skepticism that we've had to battle. The vitamin and the supplement industry in general, there's a lot of people who are skeptical, and that sometimes people are taking things because they feel like they should, and there isn't always a tangible benefit. The products that we do, we design them so that you really feel the benefit. You take this product every day for 4 weeks, you will feel it. If you take the collagen every day for 4 weeks, you will see it. And I think that's another big thing, is sort of by using the right technology and delivery systems and thinking about how much you actually absorb rather than how much you flush away, that's when you really benefit. So I think that another part of what we're trying to do with Zooki is to sort of to challenge the skeptics, the people who consider themselves, I'm not a vitamin or a supplement person. Try this. This is new. It's better. It's more effective, and you can really feel it. So there's a lot to it, but like that's why I thought it was really interesting when you explained Zooki, like how you perceive that, and then the experiential element. It's probably been one of the biggest driving forces. So that although the experience is amazing, there's this whole other side to it that once we can get people to try it and experience the taste and how enjoyable that is, but the whole other element as well, which is the science.
Yeah, and it is nice to be able to, take a supplement and you do feel different. I mean, a lot of supplements you're not supposed to feel particularly different, are you, over a period of time? It's just, but you do feel like a little bit more alert or a bit more. And I mean, listen, I'm not climbing off the walls, but you are. But you know what I mean? You do. You are just that little bit more. I don't know. Yeah, sharp. It's got a hell of a dose of turmeric in it. How on earth did you get so much in there?
Yeah. So effectively, what's in each sachet is we take the most potent part of the turmeric root, which is the curcumin. That's the anti-inflammatory within turmeric. It's normally only present in very small doses. To get the same level of curcumin that's in one of these sachets, you'd have to consume about 2 jars of turmeric root, and even then you would really struggle to absorb it. So we take the most potent part of the turmeric root, the curcumin. There's about 750 milligrams of curcuminoids in here. We wrap it in a layer of lipids. And what that does is it allows you to absorb that bit more. So not only are you having a mega dose of curcumin and those curcuminoids from the turmeric root, but it's done in a way that you can absorb really well, and that's what makes you feel it.
Okay, so my tiny little brain, if I was to compare the Turmeric Zooki to let's say tablet or a, what would they call, like a little
capsule shot, yeah.
Are you saying that's mainly where the difference is, that if you were taking the capsule, there'd be a lot of waste product and the goodness maybe is not absorbed because of how it's being sealed by the lipids?
Yeah, how much you absorb. This is a problem that's prolific in supplements in general. People take a lot of tablets, a lot of capsules, products that aren't necessarily designed to be absorbed. They're designed to be very cost effective, and they're designed to be transported around the world in massive tubs with lots of different pills, and they're designed that you can have a 6-month supply, and they're not necessarily designed to be as effective as possible. So the way that we've done this, and sometimes you see it with black pepper is good for absorbing turmeric. Using lipids is that bit better. So when you take a sachet of this compared to a tablet or a capsule, it's designed to be more bioavailable, so you absorb more, and that's when you really feel the benefits of turmeric.
Do you know how much you absorb, say how many capsules you would have to take to absorb the... Don't nod at me, you can't have done that study.
Well, it depends. So there's numbers out there. So it depends on the levels of curcuminoids that would be in the capsule, but studies have been done that show that these sorts of structures, so the way that these lipids have encapsulated the curcumin, studies have shown that it can be up to 185 times more bioavailable by using a micellized curcumin compared to just regular unencapsulated turmeric. So curcumin on its own, if you were just to consume, not only if you were just to consume a turmeric root, you would absorb very little curcumin, but if you were to consume pure curcumin powder, this is way easier for your body to absorb.
That has actually made don't laugh at me, that's made sense, that has.
Yeah, so that's it. So it's half of it is about the experience, and getting to actually consume this much turmeric is a challenge because of the taste of turmeric. But that's half the battle. The other half of the battle is how much you actually absorb, and that's what feeds through, and that's why you would feel the difference. If you don't absorb it, it won't have an impact, and that's the same across the board, not just curcumin and turmeric, but everything.
See, I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn.
So thanks for coming in, Matt. I think you've been the first guest on the Your Zooki podcast. We don't really have a podcast yet. This may actually turn into a podcast. Yeah. It's been quite fun. I think it's been good just to learn about your career, learn about some of the stuff you've done with nutrition. It's fascinating to hear about the mental pressures and the stuff that you've been through. And I think a lot of the people watching and listening, aside from the stuff on the nutrition and the Zooki, I think it's quite inspiring to hear like some of the behind the scenes of what it takes to make it at the top of rugby. So thanks very much for coming in.
Absolute pleasure. And looking forward to working with you guys as well.
You too, thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the first ever Zooki podcast. If you want to try Turmeric Zooki, head over to yourzooki.com and use code MattDawson10 for 10% off your first order. For more podcasts featuring exciting guests and nutritional expertise, subscribe to our channel and follow @YourZooki on social media to stay up to date.